welcome to the Self Storage Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, as always, Thaddeus Campbell, and we are taking a little bit of a detour today. Super excited to have literally the guy who wrote the book on Flex Space join us, Cody Payne. He is a broker with Colliers International, based out of Texas. Flex Space Domination, the book that he put out recently. I've actually dug into it. I'm on vacation this week, Cody. It's worked out perfect. I've been able to dig into your book, and it's absolutely A, very well written and compelling, but B, filled with a ton of information that's been awesome. I connected with you recently, and I've been hearing about Flex Space all over the place. A lot of the guys that I communicate with in self-storage, including my group at Safe Storage USA, have started looking into this asset class. Super excited to have you come on and really kind of fill us in and fill in a lot of the self-storage people about Flex Space and why you're so gung-ho about it right now. So thanks for joining us.
Man, I appreciate you having me, and I'm glad you're reading the book. I don't have the highest education, but we wrote it as best we could. A couple of guys in the office are much more educated than I am, so they definitely checked the grammar because you didn't want to read what I wrote. I wrote most of it, but I'm just saying, like, if you would have read it it sounded like I talked.
Well, listen, I've talked to you before, and we've had a great conversation. And look, you got 20 years in this business, so I'm interested, and I always ask people this in the self-storage space, and I'm going to ask you the same question I always start the podcast on, the only difference being not self-storage. Tell me your journey to getting into industrial flex.
Man, it's as simple as can be. I was a car salesman, and I wanted to own a Cadillac. I'd never had a Cadillac in my life, and met a guy that ran a small local commercial real estate brokerage shop in Arlington, and he said, I think I can help you get that Cadillac. And so joined up with him, started leasing it. I was a leasing agent when I first started. And so I leased it for a long time, got into the investment sales side of it, built a really good team. These guys have been with me for years, really solid guys, and just really been doing it. And now we were kind of full-fledged into the just investment sales side of it. Also on the development side, we help people build it. We also invest in it as well. And so now we can do, pretty much everything in it. But yeah, I started as a leasing agent, and I think that's what actually helped us, because another guy that works for me, Tran, he also was a leasing agent prior to me and him joining up. And so, we've got a lot of experience from front to back on the small bay flex side.
You understand the what people are looking for, given that you are representing people out looking for industrial flex as a leasing agent.
Oh yeah, and went through the grind of it. If you're going to be a leasing agent in flex, you got to do 60, 70, 80 leases a year to make a good, to make a good solid living. And because, it's a high velocity game, because, the commission on the leases aren't huge, but if you do a lot of them, it accumulates well. And so, but yeah, no, I love the asset class. It's evolved so much as well, because when I first got in it, it was just small subcontractors that leased it. And, what's funny is people actually called it the dirty fingernail asset class, which I was always offended by that, but, I understand it. But now it's a very hot rising asset class. Institutions are looking at it. Institutions are buying it where they wouldn't in the past. And I think it's got a very bright future.
So I'm the son of my father grew up on a 40-acre potato farm. So when you say dirty fingernails, I'm all about it. Let's dig in. This is where I want to be. And I think traditionally we think like, you build industrial flex, you're going for contractors, for guys who work, who are out, getting their hands dirty. Nothing wrong with that. That's a group of people that need space, that need a place to put their stuff.
Ask any politician. That's the backbone of America.
Yeah, 100%, right? Those small business people. So I want to dig into this a little deeper. And you've talked about, you've been in this now for 2 decades. Tell me a little bit about how you've seen this space evolve. I know I talked to you. I actually am reading your book. And one of the things you talked about in the book is, and I know this from my background, I owned a martial arts school for a long time. And a lot of my buddies have started to move from retail centers into industrial flex spaces because, as you mentioned in the book, significantly less rent to go rent an industrial flex space than, especially if you're in a class A or a high class B shopping center. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of who the tenants are now in these flex spaces.
So yeah, and that's actually the best part about it because, like I said, when I was leasing it, it was just smaller subcontractor style businesses, electricians, plumbers, things of that nature. Now it's not uncommon, and we just sold a park actually that had literally everybody you could imagine in there. It had small subcontractors, it had car guys, it had gyms, it had some retail guys, it had food places, it had an office tenant in there that utilized it for office space. And the product or the asset class really started to evolve in 2018, 2019, 2020 really started hitting its stride because before then, like I said, it was just the contractor base. And now it's not uncommon to see all these other tenants leasing from here because, the main thing is on the retail side, retail has evolved so much. COVID really kind of ramped up a lot of these tenants and asset classes on to revolutionize how they do business. And so, some of these retail tenants that, have come to the flex space, they were paying, really high dollar rents for the drive-by location. Well, a lot of them that you'll see in these flex spaces, they go, look, we're not needing the drive-by traffic anymore. That's old school business, right? When was the last time you drove to a retail center to get car insurance? Which, as you remember, back in the 90s, I mean, they were everywhere. And so it's changed a lot. And that's why these guys can go into these spaces. That's why you see gyms in here. You see places for kids, karate studios, every type of fitness you can see. You see commercial kitchens in here. You see little, delis, sandwich shops, Papa John's, Mr. Jim's, whatever pizza places you want to call me. The tenant pool has expanded so much to where I believe it's helped this asset class be a lot more recession proof than others because it's not just picking from these guys. It's got the office guys. It's got the retail guys. It's got all these guys that, as the markets kind of go up and down and flow. And, retail, it's had its struggles over the years. Office has definitely had its struggles. And so when you got an asset class that can pick from the entire tenant pool, I mean, that's pretty spectacular.
It reminds me of like certain cities that tend to weather downturns in the economy better because you're in Arlington, Texas, right? The Dallas Fort Worth area, because of the diversity of an economy, helps you kind of barrel through a little bit easier. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because one of the things you mentioned in the book is you really kind of feel like industrial flex right now is where self-storage was. This is the asset class that's near and dear to my heart. 20 years ago, 90s, even longer, and late 90s, early 2000s. Tell me why you think that. What does that mean? Why do you think that that's a relation that you made, and what does it mean for people looking to get into industrial flex?
Well, the way we came up with that relation is because, you're always trying to figure out how to explain the trajectory that the asset class is on. And when you look at self-storage, and for you being in it so long, this, back in the day, it was mostly like you call it like mom and pops or private ownership, right? And now self-storage is a very heavy institutionalized owned asset class. And you can simply look at flex as being on that similar trajectory. And reason being is because, 4 or 5 years ago, it was not as much institutionally owned as it is now. And it's gone up in several states easily 10, 15% ownership in just 2 or 3, 4 years. Blackstone, one of the largest REITs in the world, spent billions on small bay flex just a few years ago and has continued to expand on that. And so you've got a lot of institutions that wouldn't look at it before that are definitely looking at it and buying it now. And so we continue to see those guys come into it. And another indicating factor is to see where the cap rates and price per square foot are and how those continue to improve.
I thought it was interesting. You mentioned in the book, seeing sales commonly over $200 a square foot for small bay flex. As we're looking to build some of it in house, we're penciling it out, somewhere around 125 to 150 to build. That's a nice margin for a developer. That's not something you're upset at if you can build something for 125, 150. Of course, it's going to depend on the market you're in and what kind of rates you're getting. But makes sense that people are wanting to get involved.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, every market's a little bit different, right? You've got Texas market where I think it's now averaging around 147 a foot. Every market's going to be a little bit different, but we've got people that are building it for 80, 85 a foot and selling it off at 145 to $150 a foot, even in today's market. And so there's still a lot of opportunity there. And what's funny is there's a lot of opportunity on the existing and value add side, which you don't see as much, right? Like, multifamily, the value add, a lot of that's been picked over, right? You talk to any broker and it's really hard to find an older owned facility that hasn't had the rents raised to market, whatnot. And the small bay flex side, you can still come across it. We just sold 2 projects where their rates were essentially half of the market in gross leases where they needed to be triple net. You're not going to find that in any other asset class. It's going to be rare. And now it's getting rarer and rarer in the small bay flex side, but you can still find it.
There's still time. Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with this in self-storage where, my partners 5 years ago bought 6 different facilities as value adds in various parts of the country from mom and pop owners, right? And turned around, we've sold 4 of those already to institutional type buyers, Merritt Hill, whose money is Wall Street money. You're talking about the biggest of the biggest buying it. The challenge for us now in self-storage is those institutional buyers are now buying up the value adds, and they're buying it at cap rates that, if you're borrowing from a bank, you can't compete with that because they're buying at negative leverage relative to what we'd have to be at, which is, again, one of the reasons that it's so interesting to look at industrial flex, where while that transition is happening, maybe 4, 5, 10 years behind what's going on in the self-storage space.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I think there's a lot of opportunity to it. And the other thing that's actually helping out the asset class so much right now too is there's so many cross-asset investors coming over to it. A lot of self-storage guys are looking at it. Self-storage guys are some of the best at building these, small bay flex parks because it's kind of similar to their build, so they transition very easily. We've got a lot of multifamily guys coming over, a lot of office guys, a lot of retail guys. And that has continued to help our pricing stay consistent as other asset classes are struggling.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit and just kind of have you take me through, because we're saying small bay industrial flex. People see these 200,000 to 1,000,000 square foot. I live in New Jersey, and there's 100 million people within 5-6 hours. So you have these massive, and I'm sure you're the same way in Dallas, Fort Worth, these massive Amazon type warehouses all over the place. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about significantly smaller type facilities. So take me through a little bit of like, what is a small bay industrial flex, size wise, square footage wise?
Yeah, so the small bay size, is your tenant spaces are really going to be around 1,800 to 2,000 square feet. And the reason you do them in those sizes is because that tailors to your largest tenant pool, right? That allows people to move out of their garage from their businesses into these places. But that also allows you to build in increments. And so, like, say you build a 10,000 square foot building and you chop them up in 2,000 square foot spaces. That allows this guy, and this is what makes it flexible, that allows this guy to lease 2,000 square feet from you. And as his business grows, then he can maybe expand into 4,000, 6,000. And that's what really makes these projects so flexible is they can, kind of transform and move along with how the tenants need the spaces. Because, they also will downsize as well. But your best tenant size that you're going to find right now that's got your largest pool is going to be around 1,800 square feet. That allows you to really have a small office, a restroom, and the rest warehouse.
How does that affect pricing per square foot rental wise, that smaller space? Are you able to get more rent for people because you're not trying to lease out 5,000-10,000 square feet at a time?
Traditionally, yeah. So traditionally, the smaller the space is, the higher the rent you're going to get. And as you move to 4, 6, 8, 10,000 square feet, that's when that rental rate starts to come down. Because as if you go lease big box, I mean, your rate's going to be $5, $6, $7 a foot, $8 a foot. Depending on the area, is to where, these, can command, and we'll just take a Texas market, for example, these can command 12 to 14 plus triple net, but then as you start moving up, that dollar number starts coming down. And so you've got the small bay, you got the medium size, it was when you start exceeding 10,000 square feet, and then you got your big box that you were talking about earlier, which is, 200, 250, 500,000 square feet.
Yeah, we're not trying to compete in that space right now, but I'm interested to ask, and I've heard this, but I'm interested to know the effect that, of course, during COVID, Amazon already had Prime. You were getting next day service. Now, I had a friend of mine talk to me the other day about his son ordered a pull-up bar to hook on his door for his bedroom, and it was same day delivery, right? They have these last mile delivery centers. How is that proliferation of the Wayfairs and the Amazons and the Walmarts that are taking up so much warehouse space, how has that affected industrial flex, and what's that doing for the opportunity?
I don't think there's a huge correlation in it actually affecting small bay flex. What larger businesses like that do sometimes take away from small businesses, obviously. But I will tell you, I mean, you had Amazon lease up all that space during COVID and then come out and say, hey, we got like 10 million square feet more than we need. And so, those spaces kind of come and go. The big box industrial, I believe they're a much riskier asset because you're not as reliant on as many tenants as where the small bay,
Yeah.
you kind of have that advantage, kind of similar to storage is you usually have, if you've got 60,000 square feet and you're in 2,000 square foot bays, you got 30 tenants. And so you can lose a few and still be just fine. But I think that, those can affect the, retail side, the e-commerce guys a little bit, but they've also brought in quite a few businesses as well because, it's not uncommon to see Amazon shippers and Amazon stores in these small bay flex parks.
Next question I wanted to ask you is there's a variety of styles in industrial small bay flex, right? It's not one size fits all. It's similar to what we look at in self storage, where you've got single story and you've got older Citadel Fortress style looking, and now you've got a newer generation where it's really some. I just saw a place the other day went up a DXT Capital, who's a big developer, top 50 owner in the space. They built a facility up in Rhode Island. It looks like a multifamily condominium complex. It's unbelievable, the facade of this self-storage place. And industrial flex, very similar. Like there's a range of different build types you can do. Take me through that and what the advantages are.
Yeah, and no, you're right. I mean, self-storage when I was younger, was a bunch of crummy looking garages, and now you'll drive by a facility sitting next to an office building that's 4 or 5 stories, and it's stunningly
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
As far as the small bay side goes, you've got your efficient model, which is just going to be your basic metal garage door, walk-in door, and that's it. Those are the most popular with new builders. They're the easiest to build. They'll build those out in the county where there's less restrictions and things of that nature. You've got your showroom flex model, which we like, which that's going to tailor to your larger tenant pool. That's where you have a little bit more glass up front. It kind of looks like a little more storefront, but you still got a garage door. You've got a premium model, which is going to be really high end. You'll see, high end office spaces go into some of those. You've got your condo, which can be anywhere from, a business style condo, luxury condo, or even car condos, which I know y'all got plenty of those out there, guys that make those luxury car condos where, car enthusiasts buy them. We've got several of those guys, all across the U.S. That do those. And, the condo side is very interesting because, the strategy is much different on those, right? You're building it to sell the units and then kind of wipe your hands and you're done. And then you got the hybrid, which is where people kind of mix a little bit here and there with all of them. But like I said, our favorite is the showroom model because that gets your light industrial, your office, your retail, your showroom guys, right? Your tile guys, your flooring guys, all those guys you can grab, which is your largest tenant pool.
Tell me a little bit about the difference. If I go just build a basic, simple, no fancy windows in the front, no glass door, versus if I do that premium flex, what am I looking at cost per square foot build wise? How much more
I
is it going to cost me to build that?
mean, you're looking at quite a bit. I mean, for showroom glass itself, for the glass, we see people paying up to $50 per square foot just on the glass side, which, is retail glass. So, I mean, you can have a substantial difference. I mean, we see people can build, the efficient model, buy the land, be done with it all for $90, $100 a foot. Maybe they're getting 11, 12 plus triple net. You go to the showroom model, some of those guys are seeing 14, 15, 16, 18 triple net. So, your cost is going to be there, but your rental rate a lot of times is going to help you out. But like I said, also your tenant pool is going to help you out because the biggest thing right now is most of the people that are getting into the development side are building the efficient model. And as you know, with storage, I mean, it's not hard to oversaturate a market with product. And we've seen that in the flex side. We've seen markets get oversaturated. And when they are, it's with that efficient model.
Got it. Yeah, so you don't, and speaking from experience in the storage space, it's right now, if I'm looking at a storage site, we're fortunate that we have a little bit more data in self storage than I can grab easily in the industrial flex space as far as what's in the pipeline. And if I'm in a 3 mile trade radius for storage and there's one other development that is I feel is viable and is going to go forward, I'm out. I'm not even going to bother looking at it
Yeah.
because you can tank your rates very, very quickly. Of course, a little different in self storage that I'm almost always looking to build 75 to 100,000 square feet of net rentable space. Flex, I think I'm looking a little bit smaller. I'm looking at 40 to 50,000 square feet, in on a one particular development site. And so I guess what I would ask, and where this is going as a question, the reason we tend to build bigger in storage is because those institutional buyers have paid a premium cap rate if they can get 70,000 or more net rentable square feet. Where's that kind of cutoff for the bigger institutional buyers in the small bay flex space where, we know they don't want to write a small check, they want to write a big check? What are they looking for size of projects?
Our favorite size, I'll tell you, is going to be 50 to 75,000 square feet. That's your biggest buyer pool. We can sell it to privates. We can sell it to funds. Some institutions will look at it. That's got a little bit of everybody in it. Once you start exceeding 100, 150, 200, thousand square feet, then your buyer pool, as starts to shrink as your dollar amount goes up. But I think, especially for a newer investor or newer developer, sticking around that 50,000 square feet, 60, 75,000 square feet, it's going to be hard to go wrong there because it's not too much space, right? It's something that you can very easily do in just, 1, 2, 3 phases. But it also allows you to kind of grasp what's going on in the area and lease up timeline. But we sell stuff as small as 20,000 square feet, and so we did a project actually not far from here that was on the smaller side, and it sold for $180 a foot, and I think he had 110 in it.
Wow. Tough
Yeah.
living. That's tough living.
It's tough living, man.
My developer brain just got a little too excited, to be honest with you. You build it for 110 and sell it for 180. That's a home run all day, every day.
Man, and he took his money and he ran out the door. And we got guys. The thing is the small bay side just has so many investors that are trying to buy into it right now, and not everybody can develop.
That you're getting me a little too happy, Cody. I got to calm down a little bit on this side of it. That being said, you mentioned not everyone can develop. It's a challenging environment to develop
Yeah.
right now. There's no doubt about that. We have our challenges on that side of it. Question I was going to ask you is areas of the country that you're seeing this become, be more successful in. Are there areas where you're seeing it be a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Lease up faster and better rates than other areas?
Yeah, so Florida is a very good area. Georgia is a great area. Arizona is a phenomenal area. The Carolinas are doing really, really well. We've got several guys looking in Washington. Colorado was a really good area, but if nobody's been out there lately, it's turning into metal building flex central, and I've got a fear of oversaturation out there. But it's still, as of today, it's still a very good market. But there's
interesting. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
you're right.
there's a lot
But
of
you're right.
builders
It's a
out
very
there.
interesting. It's a very interesting
In
market.
self-storage, it got oversaturated very quickly 10 years ago and had now it's coming back. You're seeing some development projects out there again, but it's for whatever reason, there's a lot of the big self-storage development groups are based in and around Denver, which is it's interesting to me. You wouldn't think that Denver would be this hub of big development, but for whatever reason, that city grows quick.
It's metal building mecca when it comes to small bay flex. We've looked at so many parks out there, and I mean, I think there's the trajectory that it's on. I mean, I think it's definitely seeing oversaturation in some areas, but every market kind of has that. I mean, Texas has that, right? Texas is a great market for it as well, but Texas also has its niche markets, right? San Antonio's, for the most part, a lot of parts of San Antonio is a great flex market. Surrounding Austin's good. East Texas is not a good flex market. West Texas, has done pretty well. And so, but Texas is also a big market in general. You can't just say, hey, we're just going to go build in Texas.
Yeah, no, there's a little difference too.
Yeah,
El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. You got some differences. There's
yeah,
some significant differences between those metros. It's like
yeah.
five
But
different states rolled into one.
oh, it is, and what's funny is each major city, Houston, Austin, DFW, San Antonio, each city's just a completely different, just overall, fundamentals. I mean, they all operate obviously very similar, but mindsets and everything is just, it's so great to see how diverse they are and how certain products work better out there. Because the car luxury condos are huge in DFW, but not as much in San Antonio. They're really big in Austin, and they continue to rise out there. But no, finding key markets is not hard. But anytime you're looking at a market, there are markets that can bring very good rates, but don't always bring the best buyers, as you know.
Yeah.
And so anytime you're looking to build, we always say, hey, don't just look at the rates you're going to get. Understand your exit as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a developer, if you don't have your eye on the exit before you start, it can lead to some massive problems.
That's why we always say build to sell. Even if you don't want to sell it, know your exit before you build it.
100%. Yeah. Keeping it is beautiful, but if you can't keep it and you can't sell it, it's not a good combination at all.
No, no. And we've
One
all
of the
had a
things
car
that
or something we couldn't sell. Yeah, been there. I'm a classic car guy. I've got cars that I couldn't get rid of in the past.
I was going to bring that up a little bit. We've been going so strong on industrial flex that it was interesting that the whole journey started because of a Cadillac. You're pretty deep into the car deal.
Oh yeah, no, I love classic cars. My grandpa, he had a passion for classic cars. So did my father, and I kind of learned to work on them from them. And kind of I love the '70s. I'm stuck in the '70s. As far as the classic car genre goes. But yeah, no, I'm just a kid from Grand Prairie, and we didn't have a lot of money, and so if you had a Cadillac, you were somebody, and so I always wanted to have a Cadillac. That's why I got in the business.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, man, I always try and honor people's time. I try and keep this thing to 30 minutes so that I can, make sure I'm honoring your time. But also for the people listening, I want it to be digestible. I want to tell you right now, I would love to have you back sometime a few months from now and dig a little bit deeper. I got a ton of questions that I wanted to ask that I didn't get to. But before we sign off, I want people to know what's the best way to get a hold of Cody Payne if they have more information they want to get relative to this small bay industrial flex space, want to have a conversation with you. How do people get a hold of you?
Easy. FlexBusinessParks.com. You can find me and the team. We've got everything you need to know about Flex Business Parks on there. We've got financial models that people can download for free. We've got all sorts of stuff on there that'll teach you whatever you need to know, and you can reach out to me and the guys, and we'll help you close that gap if that's what you need to do.
Love that so much, and appreciate you coming and taking a little bit of time this week. As I said, it's been fantastic for me as I'm prepping for the interview. I'm on vacation this week, and we'll continue to dig through your book, which is, if you guys haven't read it already, it's called Flex Space Domination, dives into the small bay industrial flex space. And Cody, the book is fantastic. I'm going to keep going back to that. It's an easy read. It reads quickly, but there's a lot of really good information in there, especially for someone like me, where, as I said, our group is just getting into this and really looking at a couple of different development deals. The other thing I'll say about Cody, and I'll say this for any of you guys that are watching, is more than willing to help in any way that he can with whatever you have going on. So don't be afraid to reach out to him. He's a wealth of information. It's been extra helpful for me as far as understanding some of the things that this is a new space for me. So I was kind of looking at it like a blind rat running through the maze there, giving me a ton of information and helpful. So I want to thank you for that as well, and just let people know that this is definitely a guy to reach out to if you need any help in this particular space. Cody, appreciate you coming on. As I said, look forward to having you again. That's it for this week's episode of Self-Storage Made Simple. I hesitate to call it that this week because we're talking about industrial flex, but this is the Self-Storage Made Simple podcast. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. If you got something of value, click the like button, hit subscribe on the channel so you get updates on future episodes that we have airing, and we will see you guys next week.